Just waiting for my sweet client to arrive. I think we'll spend telehealth doing a lot of this. Waiting. Well, before she gets here, I'll do a little teaching. So the way that I do it is I have one of my devices set up to do the Zoom, and then I have another one of my devices set up to be able to take notes on. So to prepare, I just write up a little SOAP note per chief complaint, the subjective, objective reporting on the visit, and then my assessment and plan I write after the visit is over. And kind of off screen a little bit like this, I just take notes as we go. I try to maintain eye contact so that we can see each other, and I can really hear her and she can hear me. And at the same time, I just make a few notes here and there so that I remember to do a full report of our visit. So again, we're waiting for people to join. I would say one of my biggest takeaways is to be really present. I usually set my devices on Do Not Disturb so that I don't have random things popping through. So that's something I can do right now. And usually that's just, you'll be able to swipe that down from your screen. And then if you've never done this before, you just hit this nighttime idea, which kind of tells your device that you're in Do Not Disturb. And that way it's silenced and it's not dinging and pinging and changing the audio quality and distracting you. So let's see. I think she should be joining any minute. Lots and lots of waiting. And a little more waiting. If you never quite understood the point of selfies, you will after months and months of telemedicine. And there she is. Hello, friend. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi, you can hear me. How are you?
Good, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great and you look great. How do you feel?
Thank you. I feel good.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I'm just going to make my screen so that it's split screen. So let me see if I can do that. Do you know how to do that?
Like
the gallery view. There we go.
Oh, perfect.
There we go. Now we can see each other.
How are you?
Oh, I'm well, thanks. How are you in these crazy times? How do you feel?
Good. Like some days I just don't think about it and then I feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had like my parents coming out, and me and my husband have lived here for a little over a year now. So I haven't seen my parents, and they were going to come out when the baby is born, and they probably won't be able to come. My sister was going to come all of May, and she's like probably not going to come. And so I'm like, that's sad. And then I'm like,
so much.
I don't really care about my midwife. So
it's such crazy changes all over the whole globe. The first thing I really want to say is thank you so much for being willing to share this relationship, this communication.
Yeah, that's totally fine. That's fun. That sounds great.
I think it's really meaningful for other midwives to have a touchstone and an example, because it is so unfamiliar. You know, most midwives really like to see their client and touch their client and like love on their client, and it's so hard to be through a screen. So thanks for demonstrating this. Yeah.
Sure.
So I have done telemedicine for years now because I live on the road, and so it feels really familiar to me. But I want to tell you that if this medium doesn't feel familiar to you, if I go too fast or if I say something you don't understand, just stop me and we can chat just like normal.
Sure. Great.
So we're going to talk today about your birth preparation and the things you're gathering. We're going to talk about your health and how you're feeling. We're going to talk about the environment where you are and what's going on with your pregnancy. And then we're also going to touch base on what to do if you don't have the people around you that you want to have with you, because that's a big part of preparation. But let's start. Do you have any questions? Do you have anything you want to go over before we jump into my list today?
I was trying to write down some and I was like, I don't have a whole lot. I feel like I just text you. I have a question.
Yeah, it's fine. But you should just text me.
Jump into your list and I'm sure questions will pop up. So
good. Okay. Well, so first of all, I know that you were getting prenatal care at a local clinic, and then that maybe wasn't going so well. Tell me about how that's going, how you're feeling about it, and how your pregnancy feels.
Yeah, so I think that kind of added a whole nother level of like, oh my gosh, what's happening with this virus and everything, because obviously I'm flying you out to come to Thailand. And then in the back of my head, I was like, okay, I like my doctor, he's fine. It is Asia. They are really pro like C-section, and they don't really try a lot of natural things. It's just like, let's get you in and out. And I'd heard a lot about that, but I was like, okay, he's pretty good. Like he's been really good at listening. And then this last appointment, he was just like laughing at me and like telling me the baby isn't flipped yet. I'm like, I'm only 33 weeks, like, you know. And sometimes my husband and I, we feel like, do we know something he doesn't? Like, why, you know, like we're not freaked out. And so after that appointment, and then possibly not having you here because the borders are shutting down and airports are shutting down, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? So that's where the whole not really thinking.
We're going to talk about it today. But
yeah,
from the records that you screenshot and sent to me, everything looks great. Your blood pressure is normal. You know, your fundus height is growing and normal. I know that there's a question about baby's position, but honestly, at 33 weeks, like baby's not required to be in go position yet. Yeah, it's okay. First of all, there's lots of home turning techniques you can do. And then there's actually body workers that you can employ to help you encourage baby to turn. And then lastly, there is external cephalic version where actually hands-on with a skilled provider can help shift the baby's position. So try not to be anxious about it right now. Only about 4% of babies are breech at term. So,
and I'm totally like, I have time. Okay. But he's already like whipping out his calendar. Okay, May 9th looks like a good day for a C-section. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're crazy.
Yeah.
And then,
that's not
about my weight. And 1 week I'm gaining too much. 1 week I'm not enough. And he's like, yeah. So after that appointment, I was like, I feel fine. I don't want to go see you.
Yeah. It's not required to schedule a C-section right now, for sure.
Right.
So
So I think that's fine. And at the same time, like, it's good to be aware of your baby's position. So if I haven't already, I'm going to send you a link to belly mapping. It's a part of the Spinning Babies website. Have you been there yet?
You haven't.
Okay, I'll send you a link. So Spinning Babies is such a great resource for mamas because it has a whole section about how to, what they call belly map, which is feel your baby's movement combined with where you feel hiccups and kicks and bumps. And basically over the course of a couple of days, or even a few hours, you can identify the quality of movement and also what you're touching and be able to determine your own baby's position.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'd love to. That's
Yeah,
great.
it's a really cool resource. But just from right now, when you feel your belly and it's soft and relaxed, not having a practice contraction, but when it's soft and relaxed, do you feel a hard bump under your ribs somewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's your baby's head, most likely.
Yeah. And he pointed that out to me, and he wanted to take an ultrasound because he was like, I need to see where your baby is. And well, at first he's like, you're not gaining enough weight. Your baby's too tiny. It's not going to be healthy. And he said, what do you eat for breakfast? And I said, I'm really enjoying cereal or granola. And last time I said bread, and he said, don't eat too many carbs. So I'm like, so don't say bread. So I'm like, I love granola, and I make my own granola. It's like full of nuts and seeds and yumminess.
Yep.
And I love smoothies. And he's like, when your baby is 3 and 4 years old, are you going to feed it cereal and expect it to be healthy? Like, this is too tiny. Let's do an ultrasound. So he does an ultrasound. Then he's like, oh, your baby looks big. I think we're going to have a C-section. It's not turned. And I'm like, you're crazy.
Your baby cannot be too big and too small at the same visit. That's impossible.
Like, you're confused. So yeah, so he was like, this is her head. And I was like, oh, now that he said that, I was like, I can totally feel that.
Okay, great. So one of the things that moms throughout history have naturally done is kind of feel that rib uncomfortable feeling and just gently push on it and massage it and be like, no, move your head down, baby. So yeah, exactly. So, if it seems like it feels good to kind of roll it one way or the other, like, don't be afraid to touch your baby. Okay. You can't hurt your baby if it's not hurting you. Okay. So your baby is underneath your skin and all the layers inside your belly and underneath your uterus. And like, you have to go through a lot of you before you touch your baby. Okay. So if it's not hurting you, it's not hurting your baby. Okay. So feel free to like connect with your baby, talk to your baby. Even some instructions is not a bad idea. Like, your head's supposed to be down and you can tell them, and they really want to do what their mama says, they're good little babies. So just keep talking to your baby. And also, if it feels good to even put some oil on your belly and just give yourself kind of a comfortable, gentle massage and be encouraging that head down. Moms have done that for centuries. So that's a lovely thing to do. And then there's also,
so I'll be a little more intentional with my
yeah, like, it's normal to touch your belly and super connect with your baby. And now it's just going to be you kind of growing into that mama role where you're in charge and you tell your baby what's up.
I love it.
Yeah. Then there's also a lot of home techniques. They're also on the Spinning Babies website. So I'll send that over to you. And then hopefully, being in the lovely area you are, there is a lot of providers that you might be able to connect with, like a traditional Chinese medicine doctor, like massage therapists or acupuncturists, chiropractors. I don't know, if any of them are still working, if any of them do home visits. I don't know what the deal is, but if you can get connected with any of them, that would be a great idea right now.
Okay.
Yeah. And, especially some of the questions to ask is, have you ever heard about body work turning baby's position? And do you have any experience turning a baby's position with body work?
Okay.
As with anything you do to your body, anything another provider does to your body should not hurt you.
Okay.
So, just so you know, that's a line in the sand. If any technique is like hurting you, that's not legit. So walk away. But it makes sense to me that there would be a number of practitioners who have that experience, whether or not it's like technically validated or something. We have, empiric traditional providers all over the globe who have experience with fetal positioning and repositioning. And so it would make sense that you would be able to find someone in your area. But sometimes you need a referral. So like talk to any mama friends you have. If you found a local midwife in your area, they might be a good resource. We'll talk about that in a minute. But see if you can find someone who has bodywork experience. And I usually recommend that moms begin making appointments with bodywork between 34 and 35 weeks.
Okay.
So I think you're right about there. Aren't you just about 34 weeks?
I'm almost 34.
Yeah. So next week would be a great time to start exploring, seeing if you can get some bodywork.
Okay.
It should be deeply relaxing. It should be comfortable. It should feel nourishing.
Okay.
And whether or not you notice the baby move right then, like that's not the goal. The goal is actually helping you to bring stress hormones down, helping your pelvic ligaments to soften and loosen, and helping to correct any misalignments that may be happening in your pelvis or your back, which you are so subtle or have been there so long that you're not really aware of them, but they sometimes can impede baby's movement. Then there's all kinds of body work that involves uterine manipulation and all kinds of things. You may not find that there, but definitely ask around. You may be surprised and find an expert. There's also these home turning techniques, like where you lay inverted or do knee chest, where it's like your knees are on the ground and then your chest is on the ground, so your bum's kind of way in the air. And that just helps to disengage baby's bum from your pelvis so that when you stand up, baby's more likely to adjust. So I'll send you the links to read all about that. And that can be helpful to start about this time too. But without having a regular provider feeling your belly, you're going to have to be really tuned in to the sensations and where that kind of hard bony head is. So spend some time feeling your belly and really memorizing that sensation so that if it's suddenly not there, you would know the difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this maybe is a silly question. Is it just one turn and then they're going to stay like that? Like she's going to
sometimes? Yeah, no, it's not a silly question at all. I think my earphones are on. It's not a silly question at all. It's a great question. And every baby's a little different. So I can say most of the time, if they turn before 36 weeks, it is like one day there's a hard bony head under your rib, and the next day you don't feel it anymore, and it was really subtle, and there was never a big like, oh my God, my baby moved. It's just like, it's different. Sometimes they do it in your sleep. Sometimes they'll do it after you've had a vigorous exercise and not been paying much attention to your belly because you're out walking or doing whatever you're doing. Sometimes it's more obvious and they actually sit kind of sideways for a few days before they make the rest of the way down. So every baby's a little different. But you know, if they're going to do it on their own, it's generally before 36 weeks and it's generally not that noticeable.
Okay.
If at 36 weeks you feel fairly certain, and we'll do kind of a belly visit here in the next week or two, where I'll walk you through feeling your belly. We're going to do that today too, but we'll do it, as we go along. If it seems clear to you that there's still a head in under your ribs after 36 weeks, it's not time for despair. It just means there's still work to do. And that's an even more reason to see a body worker. So if you can't get in this week, definitely plan to get in the next week and the next week. Once you notice that the head is down in your pelvis, after 36 weeks, it's unlikely for that to change. So once they get down, usually stay down. Yeah.
I'm just curious if I'll be able to find somebody because a lot of places are shut down here and
I know.
People are so scared of the virus.
I know.
Asians especially are like, don't come near me, I mean, the world's like that. But, yeah.
Well, if you find someone and they're willing to see you and you both wear, masks and gloves, then that it should be safe. And for a lot of reasons, the benefit outweighs the risk in some ways that way. So I'm definitely not encouraging you to take risks with your health, but I would definitely say that a head down baby for many reasons is preferable at this time. So we'll work on that. But honestly, the most effective and the least invasive technique is just to have faith that your baby knows what he's doing.
Great.
Yeah. And trust him to know when and how to do his work.
Yeah. It is a girl.
Thank you for that.
Yes,
I have about a 50% accuracy rate with that.
I don't know how you could keep track, so no worries at all.
Well, I do a much better chance once we've actually sat face to face. So thank you for correcting me. Correct me as many times as you need to. Little girl. My last baby was a boy, so that's what's on my mind. Yep. But yours, she will know what to do when the time comes. We will trust her for that. Well, so that piece will just work itself out. I imagine we're going to visit on that every week that we see each other until I get there, fingers crossed. And you will hopefully do the home techniques. Maybe you'll find someone to help you, maybe not, but we will be there, following this all the way along. It's not something that's going to probably change overnight today, but hopefully in the next few weeks.
Okay.
In terms of your body, how does your body feel when you wake up in the morning? How do you feel?
Some days I have great energy. Some days I'm pretty tired. Every time my back hurts. I've kind of always had a sensitive back. I've been a hairstylist for 50 years and I would always be uncomfortable, but definitely my lower back and my right hip is pretty sore. So definitely just trying to stretch more, walk more. It hurts more when I sit, but it feels better.
So you say your hips again. I'm just taking some notes. Your right
hip just feels like it's just sore all the time. But my left hip, nothing.
So when you say hip, do you mean out at the point of your hip? Do you mean back by your sacral iliac joint? Do you mean in the front?
What is back by my, what is what?
So the dimples at the base of your spine on either side?
There. Yeah.
It's back there. Okay. So one side hurts more than the other?
I would say my left side has no pain.
Okay.
And the right side. And it was, I'd say, more intense. It would really hurt to walk upstairs, but it's gotten better. I've stretched a lot more and it's definitely gotten better.
Okay. What kind of stretches are you doing?
I'll just look up prenatal yoga.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Like that. Definitely just kind of rolling, opening up my legs, moving my hips around, definitely walking more.
Okay. Well, I'm going to send you some more exercises for specifically that pain, but that's a really good discovery that you've made, and really cool that you're sharing that with me, because that uneven SI pain, sacroiliac joint, is the dimple. That's where the pain is. Uneven pain oftentimes is a result of uneven ligaments. As your pregnancy advances, you have more relaxin, and relaxin is the hormone that softens and loosens all the ligaments in your body, including in your pelvis, to help the birth be easier, right? We want the joints to all be mobile so that they can move and mold however they need to. And when one side hurts more than the other, it's generally because one side is tilted or torqued in some way in your pelvis, if that makes sense. So it's actually really good sleuthing that you did, that only one-sided pain is probably a part of the symptom picture of why babies breech.
Okay.
So solving that may be the real solution there. So again, if you can find a chiropractor, that would be awesome. Okay. If you can find acupuncturist or my massage therapist or my abdominal therapist or my facial release therapist or basically anyone, that would be great. But then there's some actual pelvic exercises that you can do. And one that's really sticking in my mind, I'm gonna send you the links, but one that's really sticking in my mind is you find several graduated size kind of squishy objects. So like a rubber ball or an inflatable ball or a foam noodle or really any kind of fairly firm but giving material. If all you can find is a silver mixing bowl, that's fine too. It's just really firm. And so you start with the very, very wide, just at the point of your knees, if that makes sense. Okay. And you just squeeze your knees together around that large item about 3 times. Okay. And then put your hands on the outside of your knees and just push out. I'm not being able to demonstrate this well, but you can imagine, right? So the item is between your knees and you just press together 3 times. And then you put your hands on the outside of your knees and press out 3 times at the exact same angle. Okay. Then you switch and get a little bit smaller, and then 3 this way and 3 out, and then switch and 1 more smaller, 3 this way and 3 out. And it's just a recalibration of the ligament location. And this is a really simple kind of home adjustment that you can do. There's a few more that involve actually hanging your leg off a table and various things like that. I'll send you some links. Most of the techniques that I'm talking about are on the spinningbabies.org website, so you can check that out, but I'll send you the links. And then hopefully some cat-cow, you know that?
Yeah.
Every evening, and just being really conscious of not crossing your legs, not sitting at weird angles, just being very, very unilateral in your movements so that you don't stress one side over the other.
Okay. I definitely cross.
Yeah, and probably that's a part of this slight torque that's existed for years.
Right.
Most women experience in pregnancy that they don't really have new aches and pains. They have exacerbated aches and pains.
Yeah,
The
that's
slight
with my back. Like it's kind of always hurt, and then now it's like I don't really find much relief, but that's okay.
Yeah. So where in your back are you feeling this sensation?
More so lower.
So
I
same.
think carrying her in my back for so long, like I didn't really pop for a long time, but it is also my first. But
Say it again. I didn't understand what you last said.
I think I was carrying her in my back, and like
Tell me what you mean by that. Like in early pregnancy?
Yeah, like I didn't really have like a belly for a long time. Like she's just really tucked back in me, I think.
Okay.
You
Okay.
can help me with wording and stuff, but like I'm like 7.5 months now. I'm almost 8. And I'm like 5 months pregnant, and like nobody thought I looked pregnant.
So let's do something really quickly, okay? So I would like for you to measure the space between your top of your hip bone and the base of your ribs for me. So if you take your hand to the side and find the bottom of your rib cage, and then find the top of the hip bone all the way on the very side of your body, can you fit 1 finger or 2 fingers or 3 or your whole hand in that space?
So
if you want to stand up, I can see what you're doing.
Yeah, you can help me.
Yeah, thank you.
So
what a cute belly. It's showing now. Aww. There it is.
Okay, so here's my ribs.
So walk down until the very last rib. Off to the side, not in the front. Yeah, stay out there. Yeah, exactly.
Right here.
Okay, now find the very top of your hip bone.
I think it's down here.
So walk again back towards the back so that you're really at the top of the hip bone in your hip. Not in your belly, but in your hip. Now, how many fingers can fit between those bone spaces?
All of mine?
All of yours. Okay, so you have a very long torso.
Yes, I think so.
Yes. So people with a very long torso will not show early and will never look really big.
Okay.
It's just, you literally just have more space to hide a baby.
Okay.
Yeah. People who have 3, 4, or even sometimes you can fit another finger in that space, people will always ask them, oh, you're too small. I'm sure something's wrong with you. It's not true.
I brought that a lot. They're like,
yeah,
it's eating. I'm like, I eat a lot.
No, that has nothing to do with it. You just actually physically have more space to hide a baby.
Okay.
Now, I'm the opposite. I have a very short torso. I can't even fit 1 finger. They touch. My bones touch.
Really?
Yeah. And so I look ridiculous. Like I'm the people where they're like, are you having twins? Like what's wrong? So it's really good to know what type of body structure you have so that you can put some of those silly societal worries to the side. So I think that there is a possibility that you held your baby in your back because you have a retroverted uterus. Have you ever been told that? Have you ever had an exam, GYN exam, and anyone said you have a tilted uterus or a retroverted uterus? Okay. So it seems unlikely, since this is your first baby and that you've never had any, surgeries on your uterus or any, like you're very low risk. This is your first baby. So it seems unlikely you would have that kind of dysfunction, but it's possible.
Okay.
It seems more likely that you just have a really long torso and you just literally had space to hide your pregnancy.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you don't show as much your first, right?
It's not so much that you don't show, I mean, yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a good way to say, but the thing is that you're still having a uterus that's growing.
Sure.
You still have a baby that's on development. You've had enough ultrasounds this pregnancy. We know for a fact that your pregnancy is well dated and your baby's growing. So at this point, it's more of the idea that visually you can hide the baby, but biologically your baby is still growing perfectly. Does that make sense? Yeah, she's in there. She's in there doing what she's supposed to be doing. Now, certainly at the very end of pregnancy, there is a small chance that some placentas are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And we have something called IUGR, intrauterine growth restriction, which is kind of what your doctor was probably worried about when he was like, I think your baby's too small. But intrauterine growth restriction can technically only be diagnosed by 2 ultrasounds 2 or 3 weeks apart, showing a reduced abdominal circumference to head circumference. So it's not something you can tell by feeling.
Okay.
And it is the hunch that that's happening is by the midwife's hands feeling when they palpate all the parts of the baby that it's actually very not appropriate for dates, or that your fundal height measurements are going down, yours are not, or that you just literally look like your stomach's a bit shrink wrapped and like it's not actually growing. It's not. You're definitely getting bigger. So I have no reason to suspect you have IUGR. I think more that your uterus was just tucked inside of a long torso. So I wouldn't worry about that. Yeah. But back to the back issues.
Okay.
It's likely that you had some kind of injury earlier in your life. Fell from a tree, fell off a bike, in a car accident. I don't know if you can remember. Some people don't remember all of the minute accidents that they didn't even seek hospital care for. Yeah. But it caused some tweak, some tension point. And if you are not super sensitive to those, you don't oftentimes go seek body work. And certainly the mainstream medicine world doesn't really know much about this. So you wouldn't get much guidance from, say, a doctor or even, MRI or, that sort of thing. It's unlikely you sought physical therapy, which is the only kind of medical response to trauma that doesn't result in a broken bone. And seeking non-medical, like, chiropractic or acupuncture or Chinese medicine, that kind of thing is not so common in our culture. And so if it wasn't painful enough for you to seek recommendations, most people don't get care. And so because of that, most people come to childbearing age with their first baby with some little uneven realities around the ligaments that support the bones in their body. And in your static kind of not pregnant state, it doesn't really, you get used to it and then you go on with life. But because relaxin flows through your body at the end of pregnancy, all the ligaments thin and soften and loosen. And then all of a sudden there's movement in joints that there used to not be any movement. And that movement compresses little nerves because the bones are all a little bit out of place. The ligaments are all kind of warring with each other a little bit. And so you experience sometimes discomfort at these old injury points that you weren't really aware of before. So stretching, like you've been doing, warm, more moist water therapy, like baths or showers or just hot compresses can be helpful. Seeing the body workers, like we talked about, and then all the exercises in spinning babies that I'm going to send you that link for can be really helpful. Okay. And those little minor old wounds, discomforts, oftentimes can result in a baby that has a harder time finding their way into the pelvis because the ligaments that actually support the uterus are a little bit off and torqued. So it makes sense. That symptom picture all makes sense. And so we're gonna pay attention to your pelvic discomfort and help to try to solve that. I will say, however, that contrary to what it seems like, even though your right hip is hurting more, oftentimes the pain exists where there's a bigger gap. And so the place to work on is actually the other hip where there's too much tightness.
Oh, interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like, this is where the dysfunction is. It's too rigid. And this is where it's being pulled so it hurts. So if we go rub this, it just gets wider and the hurt just gets worse.
Oh, that totally makes sense.
So we actually work the other side. Yeah. Yeah. So if you can get your sweetie to rub your back in the night, or if you do find someone to do some body work, really contrary to what the pain is telling you, try to work the other side.
Okay. Okay.
And obviously when I send you those exercises, do them bilaterally. We don't want to overstretch one side or the other. Okay.
Okay.
How about the rest of your body? Baby kicking regularly all the time, every day?
It's moving like crazy. So that's
Good.
fun. Good.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
My body's good. Yeah.
Good. Well, your blood pressure looked normal. Obviously, you look pink and healthy and sitting upright and totally normal, color in your cheeks and bright eyes. So yeah,
Great.
you look the picture of health to me.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we started talking, I know, right? And I see it, you look great. And we started talking nutrition, and it sounds like you're eating a variety of fruits and vegetables, you're eating nuts and seeds. Tell me about what else you're eating.
I have my fair amount of Thai food, which is a lot of like rice and rice noodles and curries and, you know, meat and chicken. I'm not a huge meat lover, but I do eat chicken and pork because it's just in everything. And really big vegetable lover, so veggies in all my curries. And I love whole wheat pasta. Been doing that and just kind of whatever I'm feeling like. Definitely have not craved sugar, and I'm really thankful for that. Like I'll eat half a cookie and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel sick.
Okay.
So I've been thankful for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely like craving like salads and like healthier things. So that took me by surprise.
Good.
I mean, that's kind of what I normally eat, but I totally thought like just hearing everybody else like, oh, I have the craziest cravings, and I'm like, I want tomatoes.
Good.
So yeah, it's been good. Definitely
sounds
like
awesome.
some days where I don't have much of an appetite, but just trying to eat, like you were telling me, like handful of nuts and seeds and
Good.
some peanut butter on some apples and stuff like that. So
Good.
Yeah.
Yes. As you lose room in your stomach, you got to eat more often generally. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Good.
definitely snacking, trying to snack, not like such 3 big meals,
Good.
but more littler meals and then snacking throughout the day. Definitely.
Good. But even on those days when you don't have an appetite, there's not a time that goes by when you don't eat, right?
Right. My husband will force me to eat. Ever
Okay.
since you talked to us last time, you're like, feed her every hour. And so he's like, eat your snack.
Okay.
So,
Okay, good. And you're drinking plenty of water?
Yes. Yeah. Definitely like really thirsty. Or I just drink it a lot in the night and then I'm up like every hour.
How much? What is really thirsty? Tell me about the quantity.
Really thirsty. I don't know. I'm like always drinking one of these.
Okay. So how many of those do you think you drink in a 24-hour period? 3, 4, 5?
Probably 4 to 5.
And it's a 1 liter bottle?
What is this? I think so. Maybe a little bit smaller.
Okay. That sounds totally appropriate.
Okay.
Sounds great.
I drink a lot of water without being pregnant just because of the heat here.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that.
Like
I was going to
ice water, and now I love ice water.
That's totally great. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think you're getting enough sea salt? Does your food taste yummy to you?
Yes, and I've definitely been trying to add it to things, like you said.
Okay, good. One of the things you can do, even though I know most of the Western world has a sort of obsession with reducing sodium intake, one of the things you can do is actually put a pinch of salt in your water to help you get the amount of sodium that you need. You're sweating a lot because you're in the tropics, and you actually do need more water and more sea salt when you're pregnant. So if it tastes good like that, do it. Squeeze of lemon, pinch of salt.
Drink more than 5?
No, I think that's appropriate. I really recommend just drinking to thirst. But I always want to make sure that you aren't excessively drinking as your body is urgently needing actually more of the trace minerals and more of the cell salts, right? So as you drink more, you actually also have to have more sodium. Sodium is the wrong word. It's actually, you need the cell salts, and they all kind of come together in that package that is sea salt.
Okay.
If you're drinking just table salt,
sodium in it already, but when I cook at home, I'm really trying to be mindful of sea salt and adding that.
Yeah.
So.
I think it's fine. Unless you have a pre-existing condition, pregnant women actually can't consume too much salt. Your body just wouldn't eat it. It would taste yucky.
Yeah.
So if it tastes good, go for it.
Great. Yeah, so far everything tastes great.
Great. Excellent. Excellent. And you're getting citrus in your diet, of course, for the vitamin C.
Yeah, definitely crave like orange juice and oranges and
Great.
fruits and pomelos and all that. Yeah.
Wonderful. That sounds excellent. So it sounds like you have great nutrition. You're getting at least 3 or 4, maybe 5 servings of protein a day.
Really trying. I remember your deck of cards that you were telling me for. Servings deck cards. Yeah, and just finding that like I was vegan for 8 years, and so now I'm not. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I need to like eat more chicken, and I'm like, no, I'm eating legumes and salads and beans and stuff. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that all counts. So if you're doing your legumes and rice or barley or quinoa or some other grain, that's a great protein, that combination there. If you're doing any of your dairy and obviously these various meat products and eggs, all of that counts. And nuts and seeds, of course, as well, though it's harder to get that large quantity. So I think you're doing great. It sounds to me like you've got a really balanced diet and you were glowing from it. So you're obviously doing everything right.
Yeah, and I made some of your immune boosters, working on cabbage, and I love the lemon one, so that was great. Just trying to incorporate as much of that in.
That's wonderful.
Being sick.
Good job. Well, it sounds like you're doing everything right. And so no other body complaints, right?
Nope.
Okay. A few quick questions just to rule out things. Headaches, blurry vision, double vision, seeing spots, anything like that?
I'll definitely get a headache here and there. I think it will be like, oh, I haven't been drinking like as much water, or I used to drink a lot of coffee, and then I'll go a few days and I just drink like a half a cup now in the morning, if that. And then if I do that for like 3 days and then I don't, I'll kind of get a headache in the morning, and it's
okay.
But then it goes away.
But you can solve these headaches. They don't last a long time.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think they're anything too serious.
I don't either. But if you have one that persists, or if you have one that especially is related to blurry, double vision, any kind of vision problems, that's a reason to contact me.
Okay. I have noticed in the last few weeks, I do see spots, like a little bit.
When you get up too fast?
I think it's when I'm like, when is it that I see them? I think it's when I get up too fast.
Yeah. So that's actually kind of a good sign.
Okay.
It sounds crazy, but we want to see that your blood volume doubles at this point in your pregnancy, so that you have kind of that extra store of blood, so that when you have your baby, you can actually bleed some with the release of your placenta and it not be an emergency.
Okay.
And so that expanded blood volume has to have somewhere to go, and to have the space for it to go, all of your blood vessels kind of relax a little bit, so that there's a space for all this extra blood. And because they're all relaxed a little bit, when you stand up really quickly, they don't have the vascular tension to move the blood with you. Okay. So if it's just a few seconds where you're like, oh, and then it returns to normal.
I felt like I'm very
you're sensitive.
Yeah, I'm sensitive and like in tune. I'm like, this is going to be bad during labor, but trying not to use it and like complain all the time, but just like, okay, like this isn't normal or whatever. But definitely like I'll get up too fast and I'm like, whoa. And then I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's actually a good sign. So plan ahead. Don't jump out of bed. Don't get out too quick. When you're taking hot showers, be cognizant of the fact that you could get dizzy or these kinds of things. But it's actually a really good sign, because it tells me that your blood volume is expanding.
Okay.
And we want your blood volume to expand, because there's so many extra processes that the pregnant body has to process, the liver has to process, that actually needs all that blood to perform all of those functions and keep your pregnancy healthy all the way to the end. And also we want to see that adequate blood volume expansion so that you don't have increased risk with the labor. So I think that's a really good sign in lieu of any actual lab tests. This is a wonderful kind of clue that everything is going as it should.
Yay.
Yeah, it's good.
But
do plan ahead.
This with my doctor, so I'm like, sounds great.
I know.
There's that lack of like relationship, like, how are you doing? So this is great.
Midwifery is so different than obstetrics.
Everybody needs to get on it.
Yes, we are fans over here. Well, so everything sounds great with you physically. How are your spirits? How are you emotionally? There's been some massive changes in the world right now.
Yeah, good. Definitely just want you here. So yeah, but good. Like just trusting in God that He has a plan and He knew that baby Amelia was going to be born during all this crazy time, and if I'm stuck in my house, quarantine, that's okay. Like just praying for a healthy baby, and I feel good so far, and yeah, I'm very hopeful. I definitely wasn't fearful of labor, and I think like media and movies and like all that like makes this like a very scary time for women, and so I've really been like, no, I'm meant to do this, and I know that's what a lot of midwifery is about, but just like really hopeful and excited, and like, yeah, of course a little bit nervous, like never done this before, but excited for the journey and excited for labor. And then now with like family not coming and like borders closing and like sickness, and like I'm not a very fearful person, and now I'm like, okay, I don't want to get sick before labor, and like I don't want to go into the hospital, and then he says C-section. So it kind of like all this made me be like, okay, definitely a little bit more scared. But trying to like remain calm and just tell myself like she has to come out, she's gonna be okay. So
it is for real right now.
yeah.
Everything is dialed up, which means including the worries and the anxieties and the unknown is dialed up. You are not alone in this worry. And like we've talked before, and I've been posting all over the internet, you know, your body is meant to do this. Your body does know how to do this. And women have been doing this since the beginning of time. So hopefully that can bring you some comfort. And it's not the 1200s, luckily. It's 2020, which means we can do this.
Exactly. I'm so thankful.
So you have lots of ways to contact me, and you should feel free to reach out if you ever do have a wave of anxiety or some kind of like thought that never occurred to you, or like, oh my God, can that happen? You know, you should feel free to reach out to me. That's what I'm here for.
For sure. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. How is your partner? How is he feeling about all this?
Good. He is so like, we will not end up in the hospital. We will have this home birth. I will catch this baby. Like, so excited and so like ready for it to happen. So like having him in those spirits and that attitude towards it just makes me like, yes, like this is what we're doing, and not home birth in general, just like the situation we're in now, and so
Are you both still working?
So he is a pastor at a church here, and so he's resorted all to online stuff, and they have online church and meetings, and because they can't meet. And then I'm volunteer for a nonprofit, and we just shut it down this week.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's been hard. We had students that they're in a 10-month program, and so we just closed.
Yeah.
Just don't know what the future looks like. So that was hard, but definitely like, well, this is God's plan, because now I can just be at home. So it worked out.
Yeah, well, at the same time, I know how disorienting it can be when you lose that daily pathway, that daily habit. So yeah, it's good to recreate a new ritual for yourself. You know, I think, as I've been telling everyone, midwives and mamas alike, a few days or even a week of kind of I'm on vacation veg time is normal and expected, and it's actually a good way for your heart and soul to kind of let down and decompress. But then because this is going to go on so long, it's important to create a schedule for yourself, because we really need that in our lives. Depression and anxiety grow when the unknown is bigger than it needs to be. So, so when you're ready, create something that you do every day, you know, get up at a similar time, you know, have your morning routine.
I was telling my husband that I'm like, I can't stay in my pajamas all day. Like I got to get up and just
like a few days. Okay, fine. But then after that, you know, get a pattern, get a rhythm. It will help your mental health. It will help your physicality. It will help you prepare for this new life that you're about to live with a baby. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, good. Well, so it sounds like you're doing really well. Before we end today, I'd love to just sort of do a virtual prenatal where we kind of, I'll walk you through feeling your belly and measuring your fundus. So just so that we can have that connection.
Okay.
But before we do that, let's chat, because one of the questions that we had messaged about was like, what if this really goes on in such a way that I can't get to you, and or the services that you want there are not available?
Okay.
Do you have questions that you want to start off with?
No, I just know that as far as Thailand goes, they are closing the airports April 10th and opening them back up on May 1st, or I think it's April 30th, but like midnight, so May 1st. And so I just feel like May 1st, like 2 weeks until birth, if I like actually deliver on my due date, but you said most of the time I'm late, so I'm just like praying that I'm late. I'm like,
oh. Women have prayed to be late, right?
Yeah, right. I'm like, I don't want to be pregnant anymore, but like, I want her to be.
Yeah.
So I'm like, wow, like finding out May 1st, if you're gonna be able to come for sure or not, because a lot of these dates are being like pushed back and pushed back. I'm like, that makes me nervous.
Yeah.
Especially now because my doctor's like, oh, your baby won't turn, or it's too big, we have to do C-section. I'm like, okay, like, you know I can refuse. Like my sister's like, you can refuse his services, find somebody. I'm like, but he's like one of the best on the island. So I don't really know what my options are. There is a lady that I've come in contact with who used to be a midwife in China. So she's not licensed here in Thailand, but she lives here. And so we have a FaceTime date this week coming up, and I'm just going to feel her out. We've chatted a little bit.
Good.
So I don't feel such a connection with her, but I'm kind like I do with you, but I'm kind of like, you know what, if you've delivered babies, like, that's my criteria. Like if you're familiar with this and you've done it enough. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, I love that. I'm so glad you're going to research that. And if you want to bring me in on any of those calls or connections, feel free to invite me on that one. Certainly, it's your process to investigate who and when and all that. But if you want help thinking up the questions and those kinds of things, feel free to include me.
We had talked about getting like an assistant, somebody to help you. And so I would definitely like, let's say this virus and all this wasn't happening, I would love for you guys to meet. And
totally. Yeah. Well, we're at this point, we're just playing it day by day. Yeah. And I think I'm doing the same thing. You're doing the same all over the globe. We're all doing the same thing. Let's see what happens. And I think it's great. If you feel a rapport with her and you develop a feeling of trust and like you think that's a good plan, I'm so for it to have someone local that you can have at your disposal. I will say, however, over the years, I've definitely found that if you get an off vibe, like this is not someone that I can be with, that's actually can be worse than having no one. So really listen to your instincts there. Our hope is that, she's like 99% of midwives around the globe and just loving and helpful and kind and will be right what you need. But definitely if it doesn't feel right, trust your gut. Okay. And so apropos, I kind of have this talk with every one of my clients, even outside of a pandemic and even when they live a few miles from my house, because you just never know. Babies have their own agenda. And so we talk about unwished for surprises, we talk about complications, and we talk about what if baby comes too fast. We talk about that with everyone. So I'm going to table the complications conversation for when we're actually closer to having a plan, because right now you're pregnant, you eat well, you sleep, you take good care of your spirit, and that's just what you're doing. So I doubt we're going to have an interruption in communication. So I think we'll be able to keep talking throughout this whole process, regardless of what ends up happening with travel. So let's table the complications conversation until we get closer to actually having a plan. But I did want to kind of just chat through any questions you might have around what could happen if you were not able to have the support that you needed around you. if you don't have these questions yet, we don't have to go into them, but you had kind of mentioned in your messaging that you did, like what happens if nobody's here. And so I wanted to give us an opportunity to chat through that if you want to.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So what I say to all moms, regardless of where they live or what's going on, is that babies who make it all the way to term really want to be here. So you can have a lot of faith in them and the process and your body and the brilliance that is the function of labor and delivery, because it works. It works so well. We live in an overpopulated. Okay. Right?
Right.
So there's kind of two real worries that exist in most moms' heads. If this is not your worry, you can feel free to disregard it. If you have other worries, you can certainly ask me. But most moms have a worry of like my baby and all that is, the worry around are they safe and, you know, what do I need to do and that kind of thing. So we can talk about that. And then they kind of have a worry of like, how do I get through labor? Like this painful thing that everyone talks about. And some people go and get massive amounts of medication to avoid. It must be really bad. Like, how do I do that? Right? So those are really two separate concerns. And I like to separate them because they actually belong in different places.
Okay.
Right? So being worried about how to get through labor is 100% every single mom's worry. Okay. And it doesn't matter whether you have a huge team at your disposal, whether you have an epidural coming your way, or whether you're alone in an igloo. Like labor is labor, right? And it represents the fear or the worry to every woman to the degree in which they're acculturated to experience pain and worry, right? So growing up in a Western Americanized society, you were very, very conditioned to fear labor. So it would be normal that that's a worry for you, okay?
Right.
Were you to grow up in a different society where labor and birth were a part of every baby's life, and you had already seen it several times, it may be that that wouldn't be a big worry.
Right.
Either way, labor has a very predictable path if it's normal. Okay. So when you worry about labor and birth, the only thing to really worry about is abnormal labor. Okay. So the normal predictable path of labor, when that is happening, it might hurt a lot, but it is very copable because it is not a wall of pain. We have a 60-second contraction and then a break. And a 60-second contraction and a break. And so regardless of whether you're alone or with 10 people, you have to figure out how to live in the moments between.
Okay.
The pain is just 60 seconds. Occasionally we have contractions that are a minute and a half, but basically it's a minute of pain. Basically, that's it. It's a minute of pain. And honestly, I bet just about any woman on the planet would agree. You can do anything for a minute. You can. You can do anything for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you just stay in the mindset of this moment, this contraction, and then the break, you can do anything for a moment. And if that is, for 1 minute, you can do anything. If that's your mantra, then truly you can get through it.
Yeah.
And the breaks are 3 minutes, 5 minutes. It's actually a significant break.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your question?
Oh, I just said you make it sound easy. Just a minute.
Well, if you are living moment to moment, if you're present in the moment, it actually is easy. And that's, I think, the biggest shock that most moms experience on the other side. They're like, I did it, and it actually wasn't that bad. Now, I'm talking about normal birth.
Okay.
So I want to really make that distinction. There are plenty of laboring moms that need interventions and need pain medication because they are experiencing abnormal birth.
Okay.
And there are plenty of moms that need intervention and or pain medication because they are unexpected to even cope with normal.
Okay.
They didn't prepare. They didn't know how to prepare. There were no resources. There were no guides. There were no coaches. There were no midwives. And they're truly so afraid they cannot cope. That's a different story.
Okay.
but you are highly motivated. You are well researched. You are healthy and low risk. And so the only job left in front of you to prepare to do this when it's normal is to prepare to truly live in the moment in such a way that you live life one contraction at a time.
Okay.
And to do that, you have to take full advantage of the breaks. So those 3 to 5 to 7 minute spaces between contractions have to be bliss. They have to be magic. They have to be life worth living. And the brilliant thing about the endorphins that flow, the pain relieving hormones that flow when you have contractions, is that they truly are. You feel a bit euphoric if you remember to live in those moments. If you stay in the memory of how much it hurt, you miss the magic.
Okay, I'll try not to do that.
It's a constant exercise. This is something your partner will be very good at, is reminding you how great you feel right now. It's like an exercise in being completely present.
Okay.
And truly,
Start to get in this space.
well, it's a practice, and that's why labor generally starts pretty easy, and you get to practice in the easy zone, and then you get better at it, and labor advances, and you stay in the moment, and you can manage it all the way through. And the endorphins actually help. They turn off your brain in such a way that you're truly living just in your body.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you remember, a contraction is just a minute. I can do anything for a minute. And when I feel great, I'm going to remember to feel great. It's totally copable. Okay? Now, the course of labor is pretty straightforward for a first-time mom that's having a normal labor. Your labor starts with some gentle squeezies. You've already had some of them already. You already know what it feels like to have your uterus get firm and hard and sometimes even make your back ache a little bit. Those just grow into a pattern.
Okay.
So you have those, and then you notice like every 10 minutes your back is kind of hurting, and every 10 minutes your belly is hard, and then it's every 7 minutes, and then that happens for a while, and then it's every 5 minutes, and you're like, these aren't going away. Even if the intensity is not growing, the pattern is there. Yeah. And that early labor pattern for a first-time mom can last normally 10 to 12 hours.
Okay.
So it's very important in early labor to rest. They don't hurt enough to grab your attention. They don't hurt enough to make you do anything different. You should still eat and sleep and take a walk and just have your normal daily life.
Okay.
Note them, talk to me, but you just go on living. Don't time them. Don't obsess about them. Like if it doesn't grab all of your attention, it's early labor, and you just let it pass and let it pass. And honestly, you try to avoid paying much attention. Watch a funny movie, go on a hike, like do something that takes your mind off of it.
Okay. And how long does that typically last for?
10 to 12 hours for a first time mom. Yeah. Which is why it's so important to sleep if you can.
Right.
Yeah. And stay nourished.
Okay.
Then at some point, those early contractions, which by the way, when you get them, they make you hold really still, like, oh, there's another one. Okay, it's going away. Oh, that was a good one. Oh, I'm having labor, right? They make you hold really still and focus. And then when they're gone, it feels like great relief and you're back to feeling normal.
Okay.
At some point, that quality shifts. And when the contraction comes, oh, your body makes you move. You can't hold still anymore. It makes you get active. And that's the shift into active labor.
Okay.
And this is the work of labor. Active labor is what all of the coping techniques and doula exercises and the birth ball and the massage tools and aromatherapy. And this is the time when all of this was invented for.
Okay.
Every contraction makes you work.
Okay.
You move, you breathe. Sometimes you do a little howling. because when you release sound, it actually merges with the pain and helps to dissipate it.
Okay.
And then when it's over, it's over. The pain is gone, and you get to live that blissful 5 minutes between contractions.
I already can't wait for those 5 minutes.
I know, they're amazing. And the work of labor is very depending on the mom. But for a first-time mom, I would say 8 hours, 10 hours is not uncommon.
Okay. Okay.
It's not crazy, but it's work.
Okay.
Your body wants to change positions. Your body wants to rock and move. And much like, you know, if you've ever seen like a construction guy like hit his thumb with a hammer, like he's not going to be like, no, he like shakes it around and jumps up and down and says some curse words. Like, we're the same way. You got to move what hurts. That's normal. And so what's hurting in labor is your cervix, not your uterus. Your uterus is just squeezing. The head on the cervix is being forced open. That's what hurts. So you move the part that hurts. Your cervix is located in the center of your body between your hip bones. So your hips move. You rock and you dance and you roll. And this is what being on the birth ball, so you can get that movement feels so good. And you get up and you shift positions, and moving that part of your body really helps.
Okay. Sounds great.
When you get to a place where you're able to kind of become trance-like, and you've been doing the work and the rest and the work and the rest, and you get this pattern in such a way, plus enough hormones, enough endorphins in your body and catecholamines and norepinephrine and all the beautiful hormones, in such a way you kind of become like a little bit in a trance.
Okay.
And we call this labor land. This is the place where your brain goes so that your body can do the work. Okay. And at this stage, you don't have a lot of real awareness of your space and time. Time is irrelevant. You only can get to this place if you're in a space that feels safe.
Okay.
So in your own living room, you won't really have an awareness of anything visual around you. You hear like through a tunnel, like far away. Like I watch dads ask the same question 3 times before the mom will answer, because it's just not, it's so not important that it doesn't enter into your psyche very clearly. And this is a great sign. I've had dads be like, what did you give him? No, nothing. This is natural. This is all the important.
This is the body doing its thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
So it's important for dad to know, if you end up being just the two of you, it's important for him to know that, like, do not disturb her. Do not wake her up. There's no part of this process that requires your conscious brain. It actually requires your brain to be at labor land so that your body can do the work.
Labor land, good.
Yeah, labor land, good. That's very good shorthand. I like that. And labor land leads you into the hardest part of labor. And this is called transition.
Okay.
And transition can last 2 contractions, or it can last 2 hours.
Okay. And how far dilated?
7 to 10.
Okay.
This is the very end of dilating, is transition. And it's hard.
I hear of a lot of like moms in labor getting stuck at 7.
Right. That's a great awareness. Why would they get stuck there?
I don't know.
I bet you do.
They're in labor land too long.
They couldn't get to labor land because they didn't feel safe.
Yes, yeah, I really feel like that would be me in a hospital.
Yeah,
like,
that's most women in a hospital.
Yeah. Like I totally feel like my body could not fully open and do that. And so then I get scared. I have to be in a hospital. But I'm like, I'll do everything in my power to have it here.
Well, you're very, very in tune with yourself and your own awareness of your own psyche and your own needs. And you're absolutely correct. And in fact, this is where we can have a lot of compassion for moms that planned a natural birth, but chose a hospital birth with a provider who wasn't very supportive. Because it's practically impossible to get that vulnerable when you don't feel safe. It's like, like that's doesn't work.
Right, and like it's my body going through this, but then the doctor's like, okay, this needs to happen, and you're like, wait, like I can just see myself. And
yeah, you got it. You've got it. So if you have a dysfunction in these time frames or in the kind of pain you're having, that's a reason to actually seek help.
Okay.
Right? But women who don't feel safe either in their environment or in themselves oftentimes won't progress through transition because their body knows it's not safe. So hormonally what's happening is adrenaline, the hormone of flight or fight. Adrenaline?
Yeah.
Adrenaline is the exact neutralizer to oxytocin. Oxytocin is what causes contractions and eventually the fetal ejection reflex that gets the baby out of your body. Mm-hmm. And so when there's adrenaline on board, oxytocin can't work effectively or at all. Okay. So when women are literally afraid of their environment, their provider, or inside themselves because of their not knowing the process, it's basically impossible to progress normally. Now, sometimes, like if you were in the wilderness, or in your case, if you chose not to go anywhere, no matter what, eventually your brain literally gets so tired from being on high alert that it eventually kind of, by virtue of distress, leaves for labor land. And then your body does the work.
Okay.
The question though is, does that like forced exodus to labor land happen before you and baby run out of resources? Because you can't labor indefinitely. Right. So this is why preparation is actually so important. That's why I do these long calls, is so that we really get to a place where your brain understands what's going to happen so well that it can let it happen when the time comes. Because our brains are incredibly powerful. Mind over matter is real.
Right.
You can think yourself out of and into lots of things, right? So in labor, knowing what's coming next, understanding what's normal is actually the best recipe for having normal.
And I would say like my one like gray area / concern is like, and I tell my husband this all the time, I really have not experienced a lot of pain, never broken a bone, never even had a cavity, like never sprained anything, like nothing. Yeah. And so I'm like, I know it's painful and like I'm thinking like the worst thing ever, right? But like I don't really know like what that is. So I feel like my pain, I'll be like, is this normal or like is this like awful? And I'm sure that's like very common.
It's very common. I get asked this question all the time. I really, it's one of my favorite subjects. What does labor feel like?
Yeah.
It's a universal question, and there is no English language word that makes sense.
Okay.
To be perfectly honest, it's painful, but it's not. It's like pain with a purpose. It's not like breaking your leg or having a toothache. Like it has.
Right, and that's like, it's, I'll stub my toe and I'm like, well, that can't hurt. Like, I'm going to be in labor. And it's like, no, like I'm bringing my child into the world, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's totally different
thing. Like, okay, at this moment, right? I'm like, in that pain is like me closer to meeting her, right? So
That's right. Exactly. It's pain with a purpose.
Right.
And we don't have a word for that, right? It's overwhelming. It's intense. Those are baby words compared to what women experience in labor. They're like, that's nothing compared to what it really is. The closest English word that I have come to over the years of asking moms and doing it myself and attending births is crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's so much sensation.
Right.
And yet it's so copable.
Right.
That it feels a little crazy.
Mindset, like,
yes.
It's the worst pain, but everyone does it. I'm like, everyone keeps having kids,
That's
like,
right. That's right. Yeah. There's no word. Here's what I can say though. There is a profound difference between normal labor and abnormal labor. Normal labor is very, very copable. Okay. You can do it. All mamas can do it. I've seen women in every corners of the world have birth and smile and glow and say, that was amazing, holding their baby. Like, it's very cool.
Okay.
You seen this?
No, I just like hope that that's me.
It's the hormonal cascade that happens in labor and delivery is perfectly formulated to be culpable. The intensity is there to specifically wake you up.
Right.
And make you pay total 100% attention. Because that newborn vulnerable infant needs to be met by his mother. Her mother.
I'm so excited.
I know. I mean, humans are like one of the most vulnerable mammals that are born.
Right.
Think about it. Baby giraffes drop 12 feet to the ground and get up and run away. Baby monkeys hold on to the fur and follow their mom into the jungle. Baby horses gallop within 2 hours, right?
Wow.
I mean, think about it. Baby whales swim. Baby humans lay there and wail. They have absolutely no skill at all. They're completely helpless.
Seriously.
They're helpless, totally 100% helpless. There is not an infant on the planet that would live without attention for just a matter of hours, right? Yeah. So they must be met at the moment that they're born. And that bond must be thorough and complete and a lifetime for them to survive. So the only way we can ensure that is that the mother is so completely engrossed in the work that she's doing that she couldn't possibly miss it. That's the intensity, right? That's the intensity we can't describe. It's not pain. You're not being hurt. You're being woken up. You're being born as a mother.
And I just think that mindset, like, is just so important.
So important.
Already thinking about now, like.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
You got it. That's why we talk about it, so that you're steeped in it, right? So transition lasts as long as it does. It's like all the swear words in one jar. It's like all the things. All the things. I mean, you are fully freaking present, okay? Labor's really close together at that point. Contractions last a long time, and your break is only like a minute, maybe 2. Okay. It's just one on top of another. You can barely catch your breath. You're totally 100% present. Okay.
Not Laborland anymore.
Laborland, women say crazy things at this point. Dad should be aware that she says, I'm going to rip in half. I can't do this. I'm breaking. Knock me out, take me to the hospital, like crazy things that she doesn't really mean.
And that's where a lot of them are like, I just can't do this anymore. I'm
right. You're almost there. Almost there. When that happens, you're almost there. So it's about knowing that's coming. 100% of women that I've helped in every culture have a moment, and sometimes hours, but a moment where they either think or say out loudly for several hours, I can't do this. Right. 100% of women.
I'm just praying I'm not, 4 centimeters dilated and I'm there,
Well, to be perfectly honest and truthful, women who are there at that stage have a problem.
Okay.
That's not normal labor.
I just won't be like a wuss.
No. Every woman has within her the ability to go through this if it's normal. Okay. If it's not normal, that's where all of the interventions and all of the procedures and even surgeries were invented to solve abnormality. Okay. But we're talking about normal. And because most women who are fed well and have resources and have no pre-existing issues are normal, it's very likely you will have a normal experience. Very, very, very likely. Okay. The World Health Organization recommends that 5 to 7% of women need technological intervention like cesarean section to stay alive, which means that, right? 93, 94, 95% of women are totally normal. That's a very high percentage.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So because you're very likely to be normal, it is very likely you will have a normal labor. And in a normal labor, it progresses like I'm describing. There's moments of doubt. There's sometimes tears. There's sometimes like, I don't know if I can do this. And what that really means, I need more love and support. And then when you get that, you get through it, right?
Okay.
But the like, take me to the hospital right now, I can't do this. That's abnormality. That means something's wrong. And you're actually listening to your intuition in a brilliant way. And you know you need extra help.
Okay. Okay.
Like, trust yourself in this. Even though you've never done this, your body is programmed through all the generations behind you to know how to do this.
Okay.
Okay. So transition lasts as long as it does. It hurts like a mother, beep, 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 everything you can imagine.
Yeah.
And you just literally, you just hang on for dear life.
Okay.
This stage is when the water helps so much.
Okay. Okay.
Standing under a running shower, immersing in a warm tub of water, hot compresses, whatever kind of water you can get to you, this helps so much.
Okay. Okay.
And moms are very loud at this point. If they're allowing themselves to process without inhibitions, certainly there are women who labor silently, but that's usually a cultural or societal taboo and not real life, right? So when they're just instinctively in their own body, they make noise. And the noise sounds big and it sounds scary. And so papas should know that this bellowing, this big noise is actually a biologically brilliant design, because it's so scary sounding that potential predators run the other way. Right?
Right.
So actually, I've spent years training midwives to walk towards that sound, not away from it, because that is the natural instinct, is to actually book it, because it is bone chilling. A real woman at the peak of her labor can literally rattle windows. Well, certainly there's a range, but I always try to talk about some of the more extremes, so that if that happens to you, that it doesn't feel abnormal, right? You know, like deep moaning is also totally a part of this process, but there's a certain sound, and we learn it after years of attending births. And I can tell actually how dilated someone is just by the sound of their voice, because 9 centimeters has a sound, and complete has a sound. It has a sound. So it's very intense for those that are not studied on it. And your partner should know that is normal and wonderful and a sign of progress. And you will not be with us in that moment. You will be fully gone in labor land. And at that point, you truly are just like the channel. You're the conduit. You're standing at the threshold between the worlds, getting ready to welcome your baby. And it's very, very powerful and very beautiful. And even though you don't hear everything going on around you, and you certainly don't see everything going on around you, you still have some thoughts get through. And it's amazing to pay witness to those thoughts, because they are simultaneously, oh, holy God, how do I do this? Or I can't do this. And if you listen and look far enough in that void of space, you also hear a voice that goes, oh my God, you're doing it. So pay attention to that bigger, louder voice.
Okay.
So it's big sound, big movement. You're just riding the waves, getting through the end. And then at one of these contractions, instead of going, woo, your breath catches and you press down. And this is the shift into second stage.
Okay.
And second stage of labor is the pushing phase.
Okay.
Although I don't love to call it that, because that's like an external label of what's happening very internally, right?
Okay.
So it's hard to imagine too, if you've never actually pushed a baby out, what that means. Right. So the phrase that I like best is, I'm sure you have thrown up in your life.
Yes. A lot.
Yes. Yes. So throwing up is a diaphragmatic action, right? Your diaphragm squeezes and projects up, right?
Okay.
Pushing is actually throwing down. It's also diaphragmatic action. It catches and pushes down.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So I call it throwing down. Your body starts throwing down.
I like it.
And It's literally like that. It is the same kind of autonomic response like throwing up. You cannot stop it. Like you can catch it and try to control it, but your body's going to do it anyway.
Right.
It's the same way with pushing. You're not really in charge, right? You can add to it. You can hold your breath and add to the oomph. You can fight it. It's still going to happen.
Right.
You know that feeling like when you're puking?
She's coming out.
Exactly.
Happen.
It's right. So I've heard other midwives describe it as irresistible.
That's a good word.
That's the kind of power I'm talking about. Like you cannot miss it. So if you're truly alone, you don't do anything until it's irresistible.
Okay.
Even if you have pressure in your butt, even if like you're thinking, I think there's a baby coming, you just let your body be the guide. And if it's irresistible, you can't, it's that kind of thing where you can't stop it no matter what. That's when your body is pressing your baby out. Okay. So pushing lasts for as long as it does. Literally sometimes in second or third or fourth time moms, it's 2 contractions. For first time moms, it's more like 2 hours, 3 hours. And because your body's never done this before, it's very much what'd you say?
A little more foreign for the body.
It's more, I mean, yes and no. Like you will be surprised how remarkably like normal it is because it's still your body. It's still your diaphragm. It's still your rectum. Like it's like you've had these experiences with your body, but all in separate little places. And now they're like all in one and you'll be like, oh, I get it. But it's more of like the body knows to take it in such a speed so that things stretch instead of tear. And so it's like a 2-step forward, 1 step back. And so you push and the baby moves forward and you stop pushing and the baby moves back. And it just does this for a long time. And we know from studies that kind of action actually it's sort of, it affects receptor sites all around the brain that actually increase the ability for the baby to be awake and ready to bond and increase actually IQ development we've seen with babies born vaginally versus cesarean. It's the squeeze actually turns on receptor sites in the brain that allow the baby to cognitively process faster. I know, it's amazing, right? The human body. Amazing. So yeah, don't be afraid of that. The baby is qualified and skilled and has prepared 9 months to go on this journey with you. Yeah, right? So you just listen to your body. Nobody needs to count at you. Don't need to do anything extra. You just let your body be the guide. And generally what happens is that moms fall into a pattern once they listen to this pressure throwdown feeling, is that they hold their breath and kind of add to the oomph. And they kind of go towards where the baby's going. Like pushing like this is never good. Like we actually want to curl kind of towards where we're going. And we just follow your body. And generally moms get into a pattern where they push for 2 or 3 pushes with each contraction. Okay. So they take a deep breath and then they press down. And it's usually that 3rd push that's really good and strong.
Okay.
And that's what really moves the baby. So you don't need to, but you're more efficient when you work with the last little bits of every contraction, right? Because you've like moved the baby the 2 steps and then that's like the 3rd step. So they don't go back quite as far every time. You push for as long as you do. Several hours of pushing is normal for a first-time mom. Okay. Which is why it's very unlikely to miss a birth if we're in the same country with a first-time mom. So at the very least, most midwives have 2 hours to get there, even from when she starts pushing. But we've all seen first-time moms that go rapid, very rapidly. I just had a mama who only pushed for 35 minutes for her first baby. So we've seen it go very fast before, but that's more common.
Wow.
When you start to feel burning and stinging at your opening, that means your baby has made it all the way down to your vagina. It's come all the way down your vagina and made it to your opening. And that's like a sign for celebration and excitement. Like you're almost there, but it's not a time to speed up.
Okay.
We want your baby to be born very gently and easily so that your tissues stretch and you don't have a tear.
Yeah.
So this is something to remind your partner. because you won't really remember this, is that when he can see the baby, to remind you to just breathe your baby out. Don't full power your baby out. So you're pushing when you hold your breath, and you're not pushing when you're breathing. It's very hard to resist the urge to press down. So the only way to resist it is to breathe kind of rapidly through that sensation. So you can just remind your partner that when he sees your baby, to tell you to breathe and not push.
Okay.
You won't be able to resist every one of them, but if you're even able to resist a few of them, it can help those tissues have those extra few moments to stretch so that you can hopefully not tear.
Okay.
When the baby comes out in several stages. So generally just the top of the head is visible for a while, sometimes even 10 or 15 minutes. And then the head is born, and sometimes not all the way, sometimes only to the mouth, not the whole face yet. And then there's a break, usually of a whole space between contractions before the rest of the body comes.
Okay.
Don't pull on the baby. Don't turn the baby. Just listen to your body and push the way you were normally pushing once the head is out.
Okay.
If after a whole nother contraction of pushing, the baby still hasn't been born, it's time to move positions and push harder.
Okay.
And you'll know how to do this. And
Okay.
that's usually all that's necessary. It's very unusual that a baby would not come out one contraction in the head, the next contraction in the whole body.
Okay.
But a space of even 5 minutes between the head and the shoulders is normal and not cause for concern. However, if you want to push without a contraction, you can try. It's not always very effective.
How often do you come across umbilical cord complications?
The umbilical cord is around a baby's neck about a third of every birth.
Okay.
It's actually quite normal. I know that our culture has terrified women to think that the cord around the neck is a really big emergency. It's really not a big emergency. So even when the cord is very tight around the neck, it has all of this Wharton's jelly in it, which is like this thick kind of gelatinous, like ligament tendony kind of material that that protects the cord from any compression. It's like a built-in like airbag around the baby's vessels. So the baby does fine. They still get great oxygenation even when the cord is tight around the neck. And remember, they're not breathing, so it can be very tight around the neck. The cord is still delivering oxygen through the umbilicus. In terms of getting it off, there's really no need. You will push the baby out and then untangle it.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a third of all births have the cord around the neck, and it's almost never cause for concern.
Okay.
Okay. But it does sometimes slow the birth down again, which is why you just listen to your body and get up and move and push harder if you need to, but it's very unlikely.
Okay.
When the baby comes out, babies are slimy and gooey and sometimes all kinds of colors, purple and blue, and sometimes there's got splashes of blood on them. And don't be concerned about that. You just naturally, in a normal birth, moms scoop up their babies, hold it to them, and you will rub and stimulate and kiss on your baby. You can't help it. It's a biological imperative. It's nice to put something over your baby because when they're wet and slimy, they're losing heat through evaporation. So it's good to cover them up and even dry them off. But that's a pretty intuitive process. And when they're on your hot, sweaty body from all the work of just having a baby, that's like the perfect baby heater right here. So you just put them right on you and they have everything they need.
Okay.
The birth is not done yet though, because you have to have your placenta.
Right.
And so the average time is about 15 minutes for a placenta to come. And you know it's coming when you have kind of a gush of blood or you have cramps again.
Okay.
And so I don't recommend that you pull your placenta out or do anything like that, but it is good to kind of do a push again, or even sort of an exaggerated like cough push, like force that diaphragm sharp down. And you can rub your belly and see if there's a contraction forming. And then you can actually get upright, like this picture here, kind of get upright so that gravity helps you have your placenta.
Okay.
The baby will be on you or, with you. And so even nuzzling at your breast can help release oxytocin again, that causes the same contraction process that has your baby. So this process happens whether you have attendance or not, right? So if you couldn't get anyone to you, either me or a local midwife or, whoever you're planning to, and or you chose not to go somewhere, this is still the process that's going to happen. And it's good to know that, to understand that before you're in it, so that if you're in that situation, you really understand what's happening. Okay. Certainly, I'm available to video conference, if nothing else. I'm going to try to get to you May 1st. That's my hope. And hopefully you make a connection with a local midwife who will be able to travel in the middle of the night to come to you. I don't know how locked down your streets have become, but that's a worry. So if you decide to hire her and she seems like a great option, let's work together to create an essential workers ID badge so that we can get her out moving past authorities in the night so that she can come to you. But we'll want to make sure that you really understand the process, because regardless of whether you have someone with you, you still have to do it. Every bit of this is your job. So there are plenty of YouTube videos of births online. And now that you really understand what's normal, you can watch some of those and kind of put the picture in your head of like, oh, that's what that looks like. I can see now she's in early labor. I can see now she's obviously working in active labor. Oh, whoa, that mama's in transition and losing her shit. And then, oh, that's what pushing looks like. Okay, I see that, right? So you can kind of create a mental image. Now, certainly none of these women will be you, and you will labor with your own experience and your own process and your own panache, however that is. But at least you can have some kind of reference for what is normal. Do you have questions for me?
No, this sounds great, and I'm getting excited.
Good. That's the best thing ever.
Yeah. So, I don't have any lingering questions now.
Okay. Well, we will talk more in depth.
I will text you.
Yeah, you can always text me. And we will talk more in depth as the weeks go on and we get closer. But I just wanted you to have a real mental image that, like, you can do this.
Yeah, that's great. I need that. My husband's telling me that all the time, and I'm trying to speak it to myself. And having you reassure me is great.
Good. I'm glad. Well, let's go what'd you say?
I'm getting excited again.
Good. I'm glad. That's the best feeling ever at this stage. Well, let's have you go, lay out on the couch and let's have a look at your belly. Can we do that? Are you portable?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to lay down and like put the?
Yeah. If we can see your belly and you can lay down, that would be the best. And you had a blood pressure not too long ago, and that was totally normal. And so this is pretty much the only other check we're doing at this point. Aw, look at that cute belly. So I want you to take your hand flat like this, right below your ribs. And I want you to see if you can fit one finger or two finger between the bottom of your xiphoid process, which is the bony part right in the center, and the top of your uterus. Can you feel the top of your uterus?
Oh, wait, my hand here?
So your hand is on the side of your belly. Walk your hands up on the sides of your belly until they meet in the very center at the top of your belly. Like so come all the way to the side of your belly. Okay. Yep. Now walk your fingers up, going back and forth all the way till they come to the top of your belly, feeling where your uterus ends at the top.
Like go this way?
Yeah. Yeah, you got it. Keep going, but towards the very top, towards your face. Yeah. There you go.
I think about here.
Yep. Now keep going till your fingers meet in the middle. There you go. You feel the top of that uterus?
Yeah.
Now holding that space, measure the space between the bottom of the bony prominence in the center of your chest, like right at the base of your chest, like right here. Can you see on me?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many fingers this way are between your rib and your belly, in your uterus?
Both hands? Is that normal?
No, it's definitely not both hands. I can see from where you are. So yeah, see how your hand is going in this direction? That's perfect. Are there 2 fingers, 3 fingers, or all 4 fingers between your uterus and the bony process?
Okay. I would say all 4.
Yeah, I would say all 4 too. I think that's perfect. That's great. So now
That was way up here.
Yeah, no, down by the very bony part. You've got it. Perfect. So now feel on your belly till you find that round baby head that you've been having. Right there?
Yeah, she's like right here.
Okay. So then holding one finger on the top of that head, walk your other fingers around that spot until you can find the difference between the long, smooth part of the baby and the lumpy bumpies that are the small parts.
So from her head.
Keep one finger on her head and then the other hand feel around down one side of the belly or across until you feel a long, smooth part that attaches to the head. Do you feel that there?
Yeah, this seems long.
Okay, and then hold the head with that hand and feel with the other hand across the top of the belly or along the other side. What does that feel like? Can you feel lumpy bumpies or nothing at all?
A little bit lumpy bumpy. She's moving a little bit.
Yeah, so it seems like to me you have identified that her head is on your right side under your ribs, okay, and her back is along your right side. And then her legs and hands are curled up on the other side of your belly. And then right where your fingers were down above your pelvis is where her bum is.
Okay.
Yeah, right in there. Can you kind of reach in and feel another kind of protuberant part?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you've identified her position very well. So just keep doing that. I'm going to send you the link again in order to do this belly mapping more. And every evening when you go to sleep or every morning when you wake up, you could just kind of check in with her position. And that will really help you keep an eye on it.
Yeah, her hands and feet are definitely over here because she'll like, this is where
you'll feel them. Perfect. Yeah, you've really figured it out. And then when you do go to get up, make sure you roll to the side instead of sitting straight up because we don't want to hurt that belly. That's good. Remember we talked about your rectus diastasis. We don't want your muscles to split. So taking good care of your muscles. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, this has been such a great prenatal. Do you have any other questions you want to go over before we close tonight?
No, I think we covered a great base ground and I'm so excited and thank you so much for taking the time.
It's my honor. It's really my honor to support you.
Oh, thank you so much, Augustine. You're so sweet.
Well, so we'll plan to talk in another week or so. Of course, stay in touch with me if you find any body work or if you feel like the baby shifted or you have any questions. We're gonna have a video call pretty much weekly from now on out because there's just so much going on with travel and baby's position and everything like that. But you can always reach me by WhatsApp or by Messenger or any of those things.
Okay.
Alrighty, my friend. And then just for our video's sake, you are okay if we share this with a global audience.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make
it be helpful to other moms and midwives and yeah.
Thank you for that.
Zoom check-ins.
Yeah, it'll become a thing for midwives all over the globe having these Zoom check-ins. So thank you again for your generosity in sharing our interaction because it might help others. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Good night, my friend. Take good care. Sleep well.
Good night.
Okay, bye.